Hello, this is Matt O'Leary, and this is Albums at a Glance for November and December 2016. In these videos, I'm giving my thoughts on a number of albums that are slightly a little bit better known within the alternative music world and that sort of community, and they're ones for the most part that I was really looking forward to. For some reason, these end-of-the-year albums often get overlooked, especially in end-of-the-year lists, but they're just as valuable as music from any other time of year, so let's get to it. Tame Impala's Jay Watson comes out with another Gum album, this time called Flash in the Pan. And I think if we can learn anything from, the other guys in Tame Impala's side projects and solo projects, it's that Kevin Parker is the real magic of this band. There are some really solid grooves on this thing, like the frantic, vocoder-laden deep raz or the ping-ponging bass line of Gemini, but it's pretty hard not to compare it to Currents, which was so pristine. This one just doesn't have that sparkle. Jay Watson seems like someone who almost naturally struggles with songwriting just a little bit, but just wants it so bad and works so hard on it that he's managed to come up with some jams over the years. There's definitely a cohesive sound across all the Gum albums, so if you're into the past stuff, then this is probably a step up. I'm not finding a song in here that can live up to the bass line on Anesthetized Lesson. That song is Killer. Next up is another challenging, insanely technical metal album from the most heady band of all heady bands. It's Animals as Leaders with the Madness of Many. It was more of just a spectacle to see them live 2 months ago. Not many bands are this skilled, this talented, so seeing them that close is pretty amazing. But I have to be in a certain mood to enjoy and almost endure the wizardry of their jagged gent rhythms and overall mathiness, and the vast majority of the time, I'm not in that mood. I don't think this album's changing the formula much for Animals as Leaders, but you gotta give them some credit just because it must have taken some major dedication to achieve this punishing and perplexing sound. No one else does what they do, and very few ever could, so good on you, Animals as Leaders. Sadie Dupuis of the indie rock band Speedy Ortiz released her first solo album at the end of 2016, and it owes a lot to today's biggest pop stars like Katy Perry and Nicki Minaj. She does exactly what's trendy right now, the synth pop sound, very syrupy, that at least musically associates with the top 40 garbage heap, but lyrically delivers a biting and cynical cultural critique consistent with the liberal socialist ideals of the Bernie generation. And in doing these things specifically, she gets a solid B+ or A-. The hooks stick with you, most of the hot button social issues are addressed on this thing, and the aesthetic is sufficiently quirky and rebellious. So, if you're on board with that worldview, then yeah, it's probably a success on most fronts, but if you're not, then in my personal opinion, I think it subscribes to moral relativism, yet moralizes about pretty much every issue with a stringent sense of superiority in that regard. The worldview also removes all the sacredness of sexuality, making it this meaningless recreational act that should be taken lightly. Yet it's a paradox, because most of the music and art in this vein is completely saturated with sexuality, and we know it to be one of the strongest motivators and vices in pretty much all of human history. Well, anyway, moving on to another album that employs the same spirit of the age tropes. It's Jim James's Eternally Even. I love My Morning Jacket and Jim James's voice, that soaring tenor that's so soulful. On this one it feels a little more monotonous and cold. He seems to move away from that warm soul of My Morning Jacket and into this icier indie pop territory. And speaking of Tame Impala and Gum earlier, these drums are similarly squeaky clean. I love the moments of vintage smooth jazz and funk on here. But as a whole, I haven't really got into it, and I think it's because of the vocals. One of my favorite bands, Dr. Dog, spontaneously released an album on Bandcamp a little while back. It's called Abandoned Mansion. This is a feel-good Dr. Dog album in the most classic Dr. Dog formula. It's both simple and profound, and I think they managed to do that combination better than just about any other band. It's an easy listen all the way through, with Scott McMicken's country-tinged folk and Toby Lehman's impassioned romps complementing each other better than ever. Long live the dog. Next up is Floridian Quintet. You Blew It with their third album in that melodramatic classic emo style. It's Abendrot. Unfortunately to me, this one kind of sounds like, you know, the CD you get at the back of a beginner guitarist tablature book? Boring progressions and cringy lyrics. This is just the kind of oversimplistic indie rock wallpaper I just move right by. Oh man, I'm sorry. I feel like this is one of my more negative videos. Just some albums I'm not really too into, but maybe you are, and that's totally cool. Again, these albums at a glance videos are just a way for me to cover more material, whereas the unknowns and obscurities videos are strictly recommendations. So at the end of 2016, it ended up being those surprise albums that really stuck with me. But let me know what you think of these albums, and check out that Unknowns and Obscurities video if you can. Thank you to 400 subscribers. That is totally humbling and awesome. Thank you for watching this, and I'll see you later.